Hi, Rich here. So this is a follow-up video to my last one introducing the template assistant. I thought it might be useful to give a real-world example of how you might use this and how it can inordinately speed up your template creation. Now I'm hoping obviously for more features as we continue through our journey with Studio One. Now we're at version 6, so we can load presets, and what we're going to do initially is we're going to load in a few presets to compare the time that it takes to load a preset versus building an instrument from scratch. Now this template assistant does enable you to do that much more quickly. However, when you have the tracks ready and built, saving them as a track preset is probably going to be the way to go. So first of all, let's load in some instruments. I think I'll probably go along the lines of something fairly hybrid, because that seems to be relatively popular these days. So what we'll do first of all is we'll load in probably something by Spitfire called Hammers. So we'll select OK. Now this is a relatively large selection of individual instruments, so there are no multi-outs here, but what I've done is I've packed all of the instruments into their appropriate folders to keep them organized. So what we have in this library is an ensemble patch, and then each of the individual drum pieces separated into their own instruments, as well as some loops and warps as well. So with those loaded in, we can see just how many instruments we've got there. So we're at 23 tracks, and it's time to get burning. So let's load another preset here. Because we're going with something hybrid, I think it might be useful to go with a fairly aggressive ensemble here. So we've got strings low, which is cello and basses, then we've got some woods and some brasses as well. So with those loaded in, let's have a look at something else. I think what might be useful here is maybe to go with something along the lines of strings. So we'll maybe pick something that's geared at doing short strings. So let's go with this first chair spiccato. Let's load this one in. So this one's from Stressov. That's loaded in, and then maybe we want to have something along the lines of choirs or something like that. So let's have a look at what we've got here. Let's load this one because this is a big library. So we'll go with Metropolis Arc 1. So this is going to load in an entire orchestra. So we've got low, mid and high strings. We've got all of the brasses, tubas, cimbassi and that sort of stuff. So with those loaded in, we've now got a pretty substantial percussion kit. We've got some hybrid brass, got a first chair spiccatos, and then maybe we want something a little bit more lush on top of that. So again, we'll go to Spitfire. We want Passionata strings, and this is going to give us our first and second violins, as well as those viola, the cello and the basses, which is what we want. Okay, so let's just unpack this and see what we've got ready to use. Okay, fantastic. So we've got a reasonable amount of percussion, and we've got some instruments that we can use. I wouldn't necessarily call this a huge template by any stretch, but for many people this will be enough. Now as you can see, when we've got everything packed, we've only got these 5 little folders, but we do have access to quite a number of instruments. Of course, even with this number of instruments, there's going to be a little bit of skill involved in getting everything mixed. What we can see there is that we've got some Pro EQs on the Passionata strings already. So if we need to make some adjustments to these just to get them to fit in nicely, we don't need to worry about adding in the effect because it's already there. So now we've got this sort of semi-okay-ish template loaded. There might come a time when we need to use samples. Go into our browser, for example, and head into our files. We have access to everything within our user directory. You might have something within your content libraries or similar. you may have a samples folder where you have specific sounds that you like to use. For me personally, I have a number of instruments like, or samples rather, from Keep Forest, some downfalls, some metal hits and all that kind of stuff. So if you feel that you need some audio tracks ready to go, then by all means we can add in some tracks here. So we'll add in a stereo track, and what I'll do for my audio tracks is I'll color them white, and I'll make sure I've got a couple of those. There we go. And what I can do with these is I can now actually put them into a folder. We'll name this audio. Okay, we'll keep this white. Obviously color is a preference of everybody, but it's up to you how you want to do this. So I've got some audio tracks in there already, and perhaps you have a singer. So Pink for People. I'll have a mono track there for maybe a vocal. Maybe I'll add a backing one. There we go. Make sure those match. And then what we can do is we can do the same with that. There we go. What I'd like to do with my vocals is distinguish between the lead vocal and maybe some backing vocals. Now those are packed into a folder. We're still really only up to 7 folders here. What we're going to do now is we're going to create an instrument so that you can see sort of the difference in time that it takes. So we'll add an instrument here. For this we'll probably pick Sine Player. So this is one by Orchestral Tools. So we'll load this in and we'll have a look at what we want to pick here. So for this, what I might pick, because it's hybrid, we'll go with some drones. And what we're going to do here is we're going to actually not duplicate the tracks, but we're going to make use of the duplicate complete here. So we can call this one, we can call this Red Dome. And for this one, because it's essentially cellos, I'm going to call it green as I do with my strings. And for this one, we'll go with the pulses. So we'll grab the pulses and we'll replace the drones. This one is the drones. There we go. And if I wanted to pop these into a folder, I can call this Orchestral Tools. And I've got another folder there ready to go as well. Let's add to the vocals an effects chain. So for this one, we'll add a male rock chain. So we've got the compressor, EQ and the room reverb applied already. And then for the orchestral tools, what we'll do with this is we'll do this manually. So we'll add to this a shimmer. And we'll also add to this a Simplon, which is basically just a filter. Okay. Now we've got all of the tracks on here all sorted out in relation to what we want within our template. It looks very minimal at this point, but again, if we were to pull all of the folders out, you can see that there's a reasonably substantial amount of tracks available to us, and we've done this in really just a few minutes. We've added our own tracks as well, and I think we're ready to save this as a template. I often find that it's useful to shift click all of the instruments, and then what we're going to do is we're going to disable those tracks. So what this is going to do is it's going to unload everything out of RAM. And as they're disabled, you'll notice that they start to change to this sort of grey hue rather than the colour that represents the track that you've set. And then we'll save this as a template, and we'll call this follow-up on templates. Last time we gave it a subtitle of no, so this time we'll give it a subtitle of yes. Description, again, it's up to you. If you'd like to add an icon, of course you can do that. And what we'll do is we'll say OK. This is going to save that template for us. And then next time when we're ready to come to this, we can go to new, into our users, and then we can select follow up on templates, and we can load this in as is. So we might want to name this before obviously we create the song. So new awesome song. And then what we'll do is we'll select OK, and we'll jump into it. It's going to load the instruments for us, but how quick was that? So we're not in the position there where we're having to load all of these instruments quickly and struggling to do so by having to set everything up. When we're ready to use the orchestral tool stuff, then all we need to do there is simply select enable track. The same applies to hammers, for example. Now obviously there are a lot more tracks in here. Because they're not multi-outs, if we enable one track, in this instance Surdos, what's going to happen here is it's going to enable the bus that it's inside of and the individual track as well, which means that you don't need to pay too much attention to those instruments that you're not using. We'll do the same with Iceni here. We'll enable the track, and we'll do the same with our Appassionata strings. And for some, this might be enough to get a song started. You'll be in a position there where you can start to build out the track with your drones and your textures and pulses. Maybe write some strings, write some brass, and throw in some percussion. And then as the song develops and you feel that it needs it, you can add in other instruments like snare drums or frame drums. And that's really it. Templates can be more complex if you really want them to be. It's really depending on how you prepare for it moving forward. Maybe the macro page will be useful to you, and as with the last video, I'll pop the links in the description below. Thanks a lot. See you soon.